Go into your room, that's right. Sit on that fat of yours and do nothing but listen to records.
Hi there. So I've been planning to cover this John Lennon Imagine box one of these days. And today is actually the best day to do it because today in the paper was the obit for Edward Morrison, 85, who was a deputy mayor in New York. So what does that have to do with John Lennon? A lot, actually. He's the former New York deputy mayor whose avowal that John Lennon was a valuable cultural asset to the city of New York helped Lennon avoid deportation in the 70s. He worked hard to keep Lennon in America. Now, as you probably know, Richard Nixon wanted to get rid of John Lennon because he was a political agitator and a thorn in Richard Nixon's side. Richard Nixon didn't like John Lennon at all. And Lennon was living in New York, and they were trying to get him out of the country on a pot bust. That's the kind of crap that went on back then. So, at any rate, Lennon was on the FBI file. They had seen him, and you should read this obit. It was in today's New York Times. I'm sure you can find it online. And you'll get to the bottom of Nixon's campaign to get rid of John Lennon, and this guy's Edward Morrison's help in keeping John Lennon in New York City, which obviously and ironically helped lead to his death, John Lennon's death. So, in looking at this box set, one of the interesting things about it is most of the time these box sets celebrate the 50th anniversary of something or some signpost. In this case, there is none. This was originally released in 1971, and in fact, I'll give you the exact date. September of 1971. I would never do well on one of these shows where you have to know all the trivia, because I'm not good at that. So it was 1971. So this came out over the summer or in the early fall of 2018. There's no reason for it to come out now. And what's interesting about this box is not only did it not come out at a time that seemed kind of appropriate for it to come out, but there was the box doesn't come with anything to explain why so much attention was lavished and dissection was done to this particular John Lennon album. Although if you know the record, you know the reason. But if you don't know the reason and you don't know the record and you're a youngster, then you're saying, well, what's the big deal? So it's interesting that there's no essay in here talking about that. But let's just talk about your relationship to John Lennon. I know that sounds kind of ridiculous because the guy's dead. He's been dead for a long time. But if you have a relationship if you're an older person like me and you have a relationship with John Lennon, then this has a different kind of meaning to you than if you're a younger person. Especially if you were a Beatles fan from the beginning, from the 60s, and followed them throughout their entire life. So it was only 63 to 70. It was like 7 years, and it was over pretty much. And yet the video of the White Album remix on this YouTube channel has gotten almost 70,000 views. It's one of the most popular videos. The Beatles still have a hold on people, and so does John Lennon. And for an older person, you remember where you were when Kennedy was shot, and you remember where you were when you heard that John Lennon was dead. You know where I was? It's really funny. Well, it's not funny, but it's ironic. The night that the news came out that John Lennon had passed away, I was having dinner with my friends Chuck and Nancy in Los Angeles. And this was not Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. It was a different Chuck and Nancy. And with my ex-girlfriend at that point. And, well, she was my girlfriend at that point. Now she's my ex. And with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Maria Shriver. Yes, now look, how that happened actually has to do with the fact that my friend Chuck, his family is associated with the Kennedy family. So you remember that for a lot of reasons. And when the news came through, it was heartbreaking is not the word for it. He was the first Beatle to die. Heartbreaking only begins to the thoughts that go through your head. I can't. I remember them. You remember that moment, and the next morning, I went and I was motivated to make this cassette compilation of John Lennon material. I haven't played this in a long time, but it was John Lennon 12/8/81, and it's like seared in my memory. Which is amazing because a lot of things not only are not seared in my memory anymore, but they barely sizzle in my memory. And, well, anyway, that's another story. So let's talk about this, the album and the box set. So the Imagine album came out, as I said, in 1971. And this is an original pressing of it. And this is on the Apple label, of course. And this was mastered because we're into mastering here, we're into sound. This was mastered at Bell Sound by Sam Feldman in New York. And Bell Sound had a really great cutting system. And this record is actually quite good. But John Lennon's voice is oddly mixed and recorded because he didn't like his voice, which is crazy because when you listen to the remixes and when you listen to the rough mixes and the outtakes, he was an incredible singer. The other thing about John Lennon is if you first saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, that's the first time I saw them. The first time I heard them was in a kid named Bruce Greenberg's white Buick convertible on the way to high school. And I remember at that point I was not into rock too much anymore because rock had become crappy. It had become Bobby Rydell and Fabian and Frankie Avalon and all that kind of crap. And I felt I had outgrown rock and roll, and I was then into jazz. Man, I had a little beanie and a pipe. I swear to God, I had a pipe. Anyway, and we're in the car, we're driving to school, and She Loves You came on. And it was like, the second that it started, it was like, that's it. There it is. It is back. It was like, and the adrenaline rush was insane. That's another moment I don't forget. But anyway, and then there was the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. And so, looking at the four Beatles, the first thing I remember thinking is, there really were 2.5 Beatles on the stage and John Lennon. Because, I mean, Paul was fully invested as a Beatle. He was the cuddly one, the cute one, and his hair worked with the long hair. Ringo, yeah, he was the same thing. He was, smiling and playing the drums back there and grinning, having a great time. George had that big, it was a Gretsch guitar, I think, and he was picking country. Even though I wasn't too sophisticated about music, I knew he was picking country stuff. It was like he wasn't doing rock and roll. And then there was John, and John Lennon had his hair wasn't right for long hair. He just looked like some guy that was saying, I've got this hair on my head. They made me wear this hair in this stupid outfit, but I'm going to do Beatles. I mean, and I'm not just saying that now because I can do that. That's what it felt like, too. But then, of course, there was the voice, and it was amazing. But anyway, that's not here nor there. So, this record came out, and that was after the first solo record. And the first solo record, this is, to me, the best of the John Lennon solo record. It's the most difficult to listen to because he's bearing his soul, and he's angry, and he's gone through, I think, some sort of therapy, Jungian therapy or whatever. And, it starts out with Mother. You had me, I didn't have you. I mean, that's like, you start up going, ew, that's creepy. But, there are such amazing songs on this record. I Found Out, that one alone. And you listen to Ringo's drumming on I Found Out. Anybody who doesn't think Ringo is a great drummer is stupid. But anyway, and Working Class Hero. And, this record, and this is an original UK pressing. And if you want the best version of this, it's this one. And this one is... this is an original first pressing. It's the one to have. Original UK pressing. It sounds amazing. The one that came in the box, not nearly as good. But we'll talk about the box in a minute. But so, this is the second one that he did, and this is a much more subtle record. He had gotten his demons out of him, or some of them anyway. And I'm not going to go through the whole history of this record because it's in the box. So, this is worth having just because it is the document. It's what they first released. It's only somewhat Phil Spectorized because John and Yoko sort of assumed control of this record and made sure that it didn't become too Phil Spectorized, which you could say happened to Let It Be, and you could also say happened to somewhat of a lesser degree to George Harrison's All Things Must Pass. Now, moving on. Then there was a reissue, a remix of this record that was done in sometime later. I don't remember the year that this was redone. But this redo this remix was not that good. This is the Mobile Fidelity version, but the regular one, however it was released, it just was not here nor there. It didn't really solve any of the so-called problems on the original, and it wasn't very good. It didn't sound very good. Sorry. Oh, it says 2000. So in 2000 they did this over again. Wasn't very good. And if you read the book that comes with this, you'll see there was this was done with a Polaroid, and this was done with a Polaroid, a superimposed picture of John and a sky from an artist. The story is in the book, and the story can be read online. This is not the place for the story. So this box set is available as on vinyl as a 2-record set. Now, as much as I love vinyl, as you know I do, the vinyl is it's okay. Ron McMaster cut it from the high-res digital file, which can sound great. I don't get into an argument with people who say, well, if it's cut from digital, it's no good. That's baloney. If you're listening to CDs, a CD version, there's a good chance a high-res file is going to sound, a 9624 file cut to vinyl is going to sound better than a CD. And if you think CDs are perfect, then you're just out of your mind, because they're not perfect. They don't sound that great. Anytime you compare a high-res file to a CD of the same material, you don't need the best stereo to hear it, and you don't need the best ears. You'll hear it. And if you don't hear it, fine. S-Drek, as my mother would say. So the reissue has the original record with the original credits, which are really pretty stupid. You cannot follow these credits. I mean, you want to sit here and go, I never did. So it's only now that I have this box that they lay it out flat in linear fashion. You can see who actually plays on the record, because I'm not going to go around doing that. It's stupid. I'd rather listen to music. And then the second record is the Ultimate Remixes. So this record was remixed a number of different ways. So one way was to redo the original mix, keep it as close as possible to the original, but clarify things more, bring out John's voice, because it didn't need to be muffled. His voice, it was amazing. He was an amazing singer, as anybody on the outside could tell you, although he didn't think so. So they kept it faithful. They made it cleaner in a positive way, and it is very clean. And then they did a 5.1 channel mix, which we'll talk about in a minute. And Phil Spector liked to put the reverb and everything right onto the tape when he recorded it, and that made it impossible to fix in the remix. Luckily, in this case, they didn't do that. They recorded things dry and added the reverb later, so when this was remixed, they had a lot more to work with from the original analog multitrack tapes. So, again, like I'm saying, the history of this you can read. I'm not going to go through it now because you can read it. So that's what you get with the vinyl. You get, and it was pressed at GZ, it looks like, from what I can see. And it's a decent pressing, but it really sounds better on the high-resolution file. And one of the reasons I didn't review this till now is because playing the high-resolution file, it's on a Blu-ray disc. This bothers me. It's on a Blu-ray disc. So I can play it in my home theater system, and I did play the surround mix there, but I want to hear it in my 2-channel, my really good system downstairs. So what I did was I got an extra Blu-ray player and hooked it up down here and played the Blu-ray through my new Vivaldi 1 SACD player DAC, which costs as much as a Tesla. Okay, it does. That's the way it is. So I want to hear it as good as it's going to sound. So I play it back, and guess what? The Blu-ray player, the digital out of the Blu-ray player, dumbs it down to 16-bit 48K. And the bit depth is actually more important than the sampling rate. I'm not so concerned about it dumbing it down to half the sampling rate, although I'd rather have the full rate. It dumbs it down to 16 bits. It's so stupid. And that's done because the record companies, I don't know what the hell their problem is. It's so stupid. But that's what they do. So I went and I got a little HDMI converter, because the HDMI passes the full signal. I got an HDMI converter that has a digital out, a digital optical out, and I ran that into the processor, and I got 24 bits, but still 48K. They won't give you the full resolution. It's just so stupid. So someone said you could get yourself a Blu-ray drive and get it off that way, so maybe I'll do that eventually. But for now, I've got enough resolution coming out of the player into a great DAC to really tell you that the sound is phenomenal coming off the Blu-ray. So what's in the box? There's a lot more in the box than you get in either the vinyl 2-record set or the plain CD set. And if you love this record, you should consider getting the box. So first, here's the box. Here's the book. So what's in here is, first of all, the Ultimate Mixes. That's the first disc, which has the 10 songs, which, Imagine, Crippled Inside, Jealous Guy, It's So Hard, Don't Want to Be a Soldier, Mama, I Don't Want to Die, Give Me Some Truth, Oh My Love, How Do You Sleep, How, and Oh Yoko. So, first of all, going back to when it first came out, I remember How Do You Sleep? That was the song where John kind of got his yayas out about Paul, and, for many of us, it was kind of, we were annoyed. We were annoyed at Yoko. Back then, young people back then felt that they owned these people. We made them and we owned them. We really did. We just thought, it was our business that John was dating Yoko Ono. And that she broke up the Beatles, which she didn't. But she broke up the Beatles. And how dare him go out with her? And she's the one that caused him to write a song that has, I don't believe in Beatles. Don't believe in Elvis, okay. Don't believe in Zimmerman, okay. Don't believe in Beatles, wait a second. We just gave you 10 years. We just gave you 10 fucking, pardon my French, years. And you don't believe in the Beatles? What's the matter with you? Okay, and then, on a song like How Do You Sleep, where he's going after McCartney, and he says, you jump whenever your lady tells you to jump. Well, look who's talking. I remember when I first heard that song, I said, what? You're saying that? You're the guy that's whatever Yoko wants, you're doing. You put her in a picture with the Beatles. I mean, there's a picture of her. It's a shot. It's supposed to be a picture of the Beatles, and there's Yoko in there. Linda Eastman wasn't in there, just Yoko. And then he writes a song and says, you jump whenever your mama tells you to jump. Give me a break. And then, a song like... There's another song on here that sounds like an old, and he talks about Paul McCartney's old-fashioned songs. It sounds like old-fashioned schmaltzy stuff. He's got one on here too. But anyway, all these old feelings are getting dredged up and coming up. Sorry. Okay, so you get the 9624 remix. Then you get singles and extras remixed in 5.1 and stereo. Power to the People, and there's a whole history of when these songs were done and how they relate to the record. God Save Us, Do the Oz, God Save Oz, Happy Christmas, War is Over, and I meant to bring out a 12-inch limited edition War is Over that was signed, but I have it here someplace. I have to find it. Maybe I'll put it up at the end of the video as a still picture. Anyway, and then there's the quadrasonic mix that was done back then. They did mix this in quad sound, so they give you that as well. It's a 4-channel mix in 9624. And then there's the outtakes, which are really interesting and good. of all kinds of different stuff, of the record and other things. And then that's Blu-ray disc number 1. And I will say that the sound on the Blu-ray mix was, well, I didn't get 9624 out of here. I got 4824. That does sound better than this vinyl mix. It wasn't done as good as it could have been done. I know I've heard ABs of great vinyl done from digital. This is only okay. It's good. And if you're a vinyl collector and you want to have it as part of your collection, fine. But if you get a Blu-ray player hooked up to your stereo and you can extract out the high resolution, you can buy a little adapter. It's only about $20. It'll sound better. And then the Blu-ray Disc 2 is the really interesting one. And I had gotten to hear some of these in the studio in New York, thanks to the UME publicist, Tim. Thank you, Tim, who got me into New York to hear these mixes before they were released. And so you get the raw studio mixes. They picked different takes and just mixed them raw, so you don't have any of the quote-unquote mastering. And this, to me, is the best part about this set. Just to hear these raw mixes. And they're only raw. I don't even know why they call them raw. When you hear them, they're to me, they're better than the than what came out to be the mastered version. And I'm sorry for the guy that did the remixes trying to make it sound like the original. That was his job. The raw one was just like, lay it out and give it to you. And then there are outtakes there. Then you get elements. And this is where we're going a little bit off the bridge. You get just the strings of Imagine. And the string players, they call them the flux fiddlers, they were actually members of the New York Philharmonic, and they really know how to play their strings, obviously. So you get Crippled in Sight, upright bass and drums, It's So Hard strings, guitar, bass, and drums, and you can sing along. In fact, I was going to actually sing Imagine for you, and then I thought better, but I won't do it. But I'm pretty good, actually. I can do a pretty good job of it. Easy for me to say because I'm not going to do it for you, unless you insist. Then you get a documentary. There's a new mix, interviews with Elliot Mintz, and then you get the CDs. You get all the CDs also. And you want to compare the CDs and the Blu-ray and hear the difference? You'll hear it. So that's what you get in the box as far as the music goes. And the surround mixes were really well done. It's not like sticking stuff in the back. You don't hear people singing behind you and singing in front of you. They just did it to produce a panorama around you and bring Lennon out in front. And it's really kind of thrilling to hear that mix. Although with a good 2-channel system, guess what? You get a very similar kind of approach. And then there's the book, and the book is really quite good. It's a well done book that anybody who's a fan of John Lennon and of this album especially would enjoy. It's very well produced. And there's a preface by Yoko, who we've all kind of forgiven for breaking up the Beatles, which she didn't do. And you know what? Even Revolution Number 9 is actually, we've grown into that. It actually works. I think Revolution Number 9 kind of sums up the internet world and all the crap that's being thrown at us in a way that was very ahead of its time. Aren't I being nice? No, I mean that, though. And then John Lennon talks about the record on here, and obviously written when it was first produced, about the pictures and the Polaroids, and then there's a whole section on the recording of the album and how they brought different musicians in to play on it, like King Curtis, the sax player, who died, I think, a week after it was recorded. And then they lay out the photo wheel. I mean, this alone is a public service. So everything that's on that wheel over there is right there. You can read who plays on everything. And I'm not going to go through all of that. And then it's just a remembrance and pictures. And, if you're a John Lennon fan, you might want this. They did a really good job. And then there's the Elements mix. And the engineer, Paul Hicks, who did the official mix, talks about the tape, and then they show you the quad tape, and there's the famous picture of John at the white piano. That you get the poster in all the different versions. Although, of course, you get a really nice full-size poster in the album. And they show you how they lay out the surround mixes. I mean, yeah, this is a lot of attention to detail paid on this album, which if you're not that keen on the album, guess what? You're not gonna want it. And they show you the masters and the tapes. Basically, they took this record, dissected it, put it back together again, remixed it with respect, remixed it with some imagination, no pun intended, and give it to you all on the 2 Blu-rays, on the CDs, so you can play it in your car. Or wait a second, they don't have CD players in cars anymore. In fact, they don't even have CD players anymore, which is great in my world. But they give it to you, and you get all that in the box. So, were I buying this? Yeah, I didn't buy it. They sent it to me. Thank you. Still, if you like this record and you love John Lennon, you can pore over this for quite some time. And it's almost worth buying just for the raw mixes. Because the raw mixes, how can you sleep at night? Raw mix is just... And then when you hear John counting down the songs, and everybody, you know, they're all noodling around on their instruments, and then he goes, all right, we'll do a take, you know. And then all of a sudden, there are these guys all locked in. It's pretty amazing. And that's also true when he stops it and issues orders of slight little changes to what they're playing that sounds fine to a layman, and he makes these little changes to what they're doing, and next take, much better. So it's all very fascinating, and there are probably other records that it would be good to do this with, but they did it with this one. So that's the Imagine box set, and I imagine some of you already own it, and I imagine some of you are saying, I don't care, and some of you might be saying, well, I think I'll get this box. So yeah, I think it's on Sirius now. There's a special on Sirius Radio where you can hear a horribly dumbed down sonic version of a lot of this, and there's probably some good conversation around it. But you know, the songs on here, Imagine is a song that, and of course Brian Ferry did a great. I was going to bring that out to show on this video, but I forgot to bring it out. But after John was murdered, Brian Ferry did a wonderful version of Jealous Guy. And Imagine, crippled inside, jealous guy, it's so hard, don't want to be a soldier, mama. I mean, if you were around for the Vietnam War, that song really hit. Give Me Some Truth, boy, that's... If there is a song on this album that's appropriate for right now, it's Give Me Some Truth. How Do You Sleep? Well, we know about that. And Oh Yoko, a love song. So it's 10, really, there's not a bad song on this record, actually. And that's my take on Imagine, John Lennon's great record from 1971. So I'll show you this. I just thought I'd come back and show you this. So this was I'm sure a bootleg. This was a made in Germany. That's the original old picture of John Lennon, and this is an old picture of John and Yoko. It's called The Guitar's All Right, John, but You'll Never Earn a Living. But I think it's his mother, one of his relatives told him that. The real fanatics will know that and say, you don't know anything about John Lennon because you didn't remember who said that. Okay, sue me. And then I have this, this is John Lennon's last public appearance with Elton John Band and the Muscle Shoals Horns. And this might be a bootleg. It's made in Germany. It may be a bootleg. I don't know. By the way, a German guy told me this joke, so it's okay. Do you know why this turntables are so popular in Germany right now? No? It's because it's so easy to go from 45 to 33. Drum roll. Then there was this John Lennon live in New York City. This says EMI Records, but you can never tell. It might be a bootleg. I don't know. And then here's the thing I was telling you about. Happy Christmas, War is Over. This was a radio station promo from Richmond, Virginia. It's that Happy Christmas, War is Over song, which I'm sure you all know, which is John Lennon and Yoko decided to do a Christmas song. And this is XL 102, home of rock and roll, and WTVR TV6 in Richmond, Virginia. There's the back showing you all the disc jockeys. Brian McFadden, afternoon personality. David Grossman, program director. Dal Hunter, evening personality. Dick Hungate, midday personality. Paul Chagru, morning personality. Rick Mabey, late personality. They all have personalities. They all know Lloyd Price. Thank you. And I got this record because I was producing radio commercials for the Video Biz chain, and they had a couple of stores in Richmond, Virginia. In fact, the son of the guy that founded the chain had 2 stores there. And he found me first and brought me to the chain, and that's how I made a living for a couple of years doing their radio commercials. But I went down there to do a personal appearance. Yes, it's hard to believe, but these commercials were very funny, and people liked them so much that they decided to have me come in and make a personal appearance in a video store so people who liked the commercials on the radio could come meet me, which it's amazing that happened. And so, well, I have, this is from Record Finder magazine, and it said Future Collectible. And here it is. And so, I believe, I don't know whether Yoko actually signed these each. It's a limited edition thing. Oh, here it is. Michael Fremer, Care Video Biz, 11/20/86. I think it says Boots of Spanish Leather by Dylan. I think I made that. That was my dedication song, Boots of Spanish Leather by Dylan, and I pledged $50 to their fund for the Central Virginia Food Bank building. For pledging $50 or more, you'll receive collector's edition of Happy Xmas War is Over by John Lennon and Yoko Ono. And I know that's what the minimum was. That's what I gave because I was cheap, but that's what I gave. And what else is in here? Well, there it is. I don't remember whether she really signed that or whether that was... But this was they made 2,000 copies. This was the 103rd copy out of 2,000. She probably didn't sign it. What else is in here? Would she sit there and sign 2,000 copies? No. Let's see. Studio One. Oh, there's a letter in here from Capital. I'm just going to read this stuff to you because I haven't looked at this since 1990. Studio One, 1 West 72nd Street, October, from Yoko. Dear Mr. Lee, Capitol Records, 1750 North Vine. Mr. Walter Lee, my assistant, George Spearin, has been in contact with both Gene Massenberg of the Central Virginia Food Bank and David Grossman of WRXL in Central Virginia regarding plans to release a limited 2012-inch white vinyl of Happy Christmas War is Over, an upcoming fundraiser of Food Bank. This letter serves as my approval for this project. Yoko, and it's a picture of the apartment building where he was shot, which is... and then here's the letter to... from Scott Moffat, who may very well watch this, because Scott's a photographer. Sort of stayed in touch with him on Facebook. And this is signed by Deborah Moffat, who was his wife at the time, who I don't think is his wife anymore. Hey, that's how life works. Anyway, it's all in here, 2,000 copies. They auctioned it off for a minimum of $50. The entire XR lineup of Paul Chagru, Dick Hungate, Brian McFadden, Dale Hunter, and Rick Mabey will be on air from 6 a.m. to midnight to accomplish this feat. WRXL is receiving co-sponsorship from the CBS affiliate. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, that's that. So, here's the record. And, it's probably, I don't know what it's worth. You could probably go on Discogs and find out what it's worth. But this one is very special. Because, it's my copy. Anyway, that's it.